Ahoy, and welcome back to Leia's Library. Find yourself a cozy corner, get yourself a cozy drink, and let's get started. Today we are going to be looking at books that give me existential dread. There are only two entries on this list. One is a series. Actually, both are series. Yeah, so there are several, but two categories. And I've never felt I've never felt this way about reading any book before outside of these two entries, so I just had to talk about them. And what I mean by they give me existential dread is that they are like the complete opposite of comfort reads. Like, to me, a comfort read is something light and makes you feel like everything will be okay. These books make me feel like nothing will be okay, possibly ever again. And I just had to talk about it for my own sanity. I would like to clarify that I don't think these books are bad, or it's not that I didn't like them. I actually think both of the books I'll be talking about are quite good. They're objectively good. I just never want to read them again. So yeah, let's get into it. The first one on the list is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is an adult science fiction, and this is actually a series. However, I was unaware of that, and I've only read the first one, and I only recently became aware that there are sequels. I guess I'll read them. So essentially, in this book, the Earth has died, pretty much. And the last remnants of the human race are searching for a new home. And after a very, very, very long search, they finally find one of the planets that their ancestors terraformed for them as, like, specifically to be their new home for when the Earth completely died. So they go there only to discover that a new civilization has sprung up there. So now it's sort of like a question of who is going to inherit this new Earth. Is it going to be the ones who it was made for, or this new civilization? This is by far one of the most interesting and well thought out sci-fi books I've ever read. And also just one of the most creative books I've ever read. Because here's the thing. There are two main casts of characters in this book. One is the group of humans who are trying to find a new home, and the other is spiders. Spiders are a main character in this book, and that's new for me. I also think that's really cool, and I really enjoyed all of the spider things in this book. Just, arachnophobes beware. But yeah, so much thought was clearly put into this book, and like the science, I'm no scientist, but the science seems like it tracks. The science tracks. And the plot was fascinating, but my God, did this book give me anxiety. I think it was excellently written, but I cannot say that I enjoyed reading it because every sentence just filled me with dread. There was just like this hopelessness that permeated every sentence of this book. All the characters are incredibly desperate. For most of them, this is their last chance at survival, so of course they're desperate. But that feeling of desperation and like hopelessness is just impossible to escape. This world is seeped in hopelessness and anxiety and desperation, and it is coded into every word in this book. The last 20 or so pages, maybe a bit more than that, 50 or so pages, gave me such visceral anxiety that I don't think I have ever felt while reading before. I couldn't breathe. I like couldn't tear my eyes away. I think it activated my fight or flight response. But I just had to know how it ended. Like, I was invested. Did I want to be there? No, absolutely not. But I was invested, and I by God, I finished the journey, only to find out there were 2 more books. And the ending, it's great. The whole book is very good. It's just a lot. So I do recommend it, especially if you're really into sci-fi or you enjoy feeling gutted, I guess. The next entry on the list is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, which is an adult sci-fi fantasy. And my tea is too hot, so I probably won't be holding it this whole time. It was burning my fingers. I had to set it. Okay, so the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Where do I even begin? So this takes place on this world that's sort of made up of one giant supercontinent called the Stillness. And despite its name, this continent has a lot of seismic activity. And what's particular about this world is that these seismic activities sometimes cause major volcanic eruptions that result in tons and tons of ash spewing into the sky, and this event begins what this world calls a 5th season. So each 5th season, they're kind of slightly different. They will have like slightly different effects to them, but each of them stem from some sort of seismic activity that darkens the sky with ash. It sends ash everywhere. It limits sunlight. It causes resources to become very scarce, and it often causes entire civilizations to collapse. And these happen, it kind of varies. Some of them happen within decades of each other. Some of them happen within centuries of each other. And like I said, each one can be slightly different. So one of them resulted in ash that solidified in airways and caused people to choke to death. Another one, there was some sort of steam that happened and it became acidic, and that But yeah, so some of them result in like acid rains, but typically it's a lot of ash, dark skies, scarce resources, civilizations collapse because of all these things. So the first book, which is called The 5th Season, picks up with a woman named Essen, who has just returned home to find that her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped their daughter. And so Essen immediately sets out to retrieve her daughter, to get her back, to save her, essentially, because she doesn't know what her father intends to do. And this proves even more difficult because a giant rift has just opened across the entire continent, triggering what looks to be the worst 5th season yet. This is another book that's there's just layers upon layers of hopelessness and despair over everything. This world is drenched in despair and hardship and pain. I'm making it sound so nice, aren't I? It is objectively good. It is incredibly well written. But every time I picked it up, I had to take like a deep centering breath before starting to read it. And it didn't help that while I was reading these books, I was going through a really hard time in my personal life. So it was genuinely difficult to read at times. That being said, like I said, objectively, excellent. I've seen a lot of people say that this is their favorite series, and I get it. I would like to ask these people if they are okay, but I get it. It is incredibly well written. The world building and the characters are phenomenal. There's also LGBTQ representation. There's a trans woman. And There's a polyamorous relationship that's bisexual. And there's also just like a really interesting, really intelligent merging of sci-fi and fantasy. And the last two books aren't quite as disparaging as the first one is, so it did get better for me as a reader. The books also just get increasingly bonkers with each book too. So that was fun. But that first book, oof. There's also just a lot of disturbing elements in the first book especially. Some in the later books as well, but mostly in this first book. There's child abuse, there's discussions of sexual assault and sexual assault of minors, and discussions of cannibalism. In the last book, there's actual cannibalism. So just, like, these books are a lot. There's so much. Did they reinforce a depression spiral I was already going through? Yes. Would I still recommend them? Yeah. I mean, as long as you're okay with all of the content warnings that I just gave, and with the knowledge that you probably won't have a good time. I mean, this also could just be me. I'm more sensitive to certain things than other people are. Well, I guess that's true of everybody. But yeah, I would say if this does sound interesting to you, I would still pick it up. Just know going in that they're like this. I don't regret having read them. I am glad to have read them. Both of these books, actually. I am very glad to have read them because they did give very good stories. And, like, I'm still thinking about them. I've read them a year ago for the Broken Earth trilogy and 2 years ago for Children of Time, I think. And I'm still thinking about them to this day. So they left an impact. They sure did leave an impact. So no, I don't regret having read them. I will just never read them again. And that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have read these books, I would love to know what you thought. And if you are interested in reading them, I would also love to hear that. If you had similar experiences to me, please let's talk about it. Trauma shared is a trauma have. And if you had wildly different experiences than me, please let me know. I would be fascinated to hear any of your thoughts. So yeah, that's it for today. If you want to find me elsewhere, you can find me on Instagram at Leia Like the Princess. You can also find my little embroidery and art store on Instagram at Moonlit Cat Creations, or you can go directly to the website at moonlitcatcreations.com. And until next time, stay cozy.